Welcome back to eLab Education. This morning we're going to be talking about spinal dysfunction, what can go wrong with your spine. And this follows on nicely from the videos on spinal anatomy, which might be worth checking out before you watch this. So spinal dysfunction, there's a range of things that can happen to your spine and back, create pain and dysfunction. Some of them are what we call systemic diseases, where it's something which is affecting the whole body, usually genetic, usually familial, usually passed on from your genes, from your family. And there's other things which are wear and tear things which are from use. I still believe, as a physio, I still believe that a lot of the wear and tear things have a huge genetic background as well. So hence the reason some people have, disc bulges when they do the same thing as someone else who doesn't. So there's different makeup of tissue type, but we'll talk more about that. So in terms of injuries and diseases that can happen to the spine, we've talked separately about the disc in a different video, and that would be worth checking out. But disc bulges are very common. So disc injuries are one of the most common things. Lumbar spine, usually affecting L3-4, L4-5, L5-S1, which are the bottom lumbar spine discs, the intervertebral discs. Reason for that being they take most of the load. There's a lot more weight coming on, and we generally do a fair bit of our hinging work through there. So we work on damaging these. Things like sitting, things like lifting are really damaging to those joints. So the cervical spine's not exempt from that. There's a lot of disc injuries also through the cervical spine. So disc injuries are one. Facet joint arthropathy or facet joint degenerative changes. Arthropathy meaning there's a problem within the joint, and degenerative changes within these. These facet joints through here, as discussed in the anatomy video, basically they orientate the direction of movement. Okay, so you see that in the cervical spine, they're designed to do a nice rotation through here. More rotation at the top of the cervical spine than the bottom. You see they start to change their orientation. They start to slant down a little bit more, so they're actually at the bottom of the spine. They're not in this guy, but he's pretty stuck, but they're better for flexion and extension, or forwards bending and backwards bending. So without good orientation, without good posture, we generally load these facet joint structures, and then through the force of friction, we start to wear them away, creating early degenerative arthritis. Super common, sometimes very painful, other times not so much. But now the problem when we start to have degenerative changes in both our discs and our facet joints is we start to create changes of the intervertebral foramen through here. And so the intervertebral foramen, its main role is to house the space for the nerve root. Okay, so the nerve roots come out from every one of our vertebrae. So two vertebrae will sit on top of each other and house the foramen, which is allows the nerve to have a free exit. So there needs to be space through here. Any compression through the nerve, the likelihood is that you'll have complete changes in sensation, motor output, and obviously pain. Sciatica being the most famous of all of these, but anyone who's experienced pins and needles, numbness, arm pain, weakness, those sorts of things, generally you've had a occlusion of your cervical nerve root, one of those cervical nerve roots. So that's something else which can go wrong, and it's in direct consequence of disc disease or facet disease. Okay, so disc degeneration or disc tearing and bulging, or facet degenerative changes. Okay, all of these at eLab, we think that you should be able to prevent to a large degree if you're moving well, and that's what we live. We live in this world, okay? And as a physiotherapist, I live in fixing people who haven't been there for a long time, and then try and move into a good movement realm so that they can overcome those. When we come and have a look at the actual larger spine, we're looking at things like dysfunction can be commonly seen in the costovertebral joints or intercostals. Intercostals, what doesn't have here on Boris, our skeleton, is there's a lot of nerves that run through these intercostal nerves. If anyone's had rib pain before, intercostal pain, you'll know how seriously painful it is. We have patients that take themselves to hospital before they see us because the pain is so acute. And you get large stabbing pains through the front of the chest, and really severe back pain, prevention of rotation and so forth. Often people wake up with these things. They're often created by some sort of rotational movement, and the rib itself actually gets rotated, and then it stops this segment through here, rotating through the spine. Relatively easy for us guys to fix. It's not a major problem, but generally there's some sort of movement or postural dysfunction which creates those as well. As we come down to the pelvis, sacroiliac joint pain is something of a real norm and a real common presentation in our clinics. And the sacroiliac joint, this is the sacrum through here, and these are the iliums or the sides of the pelvis. And the sacroiliac joint has a small degree of rotation, but it does have movement through this joint through here. It often, people who have sacroiliac joint dysfunction often have difficulty in single leg stance, walking upstairs, rolling over, those sorts of things. Combination of reasons, sometimes control, muscular control, sometimes the orientation of their spine. Pregnant women often have a lot of problems with here because they have relaxin, the hormone relaxin, running through their body, which creates more slipping and more play than what they would have otherwise. And control around this area is paramount. So we do a lot of things in terms of treatment, in terms of rotating, getting it straight, manipulating, those sorts of things. But movement is key in terms of maintaining health through here. In terms of systemic illnesses in the spine, I suppose a few of the really common ones are ankylosing spondylitis. Ankylosing spondylitis is a rheumatoid disease, so it's a blood-borne disease which creates severe aching pain especially through the sacroiliac joint area and lumbar area. But it's not exclusive to that area. It can affect the upper spine a lot as well. It's, generally with these sorts of conditions, you're looking at pain with no mechanical cause, night pain, unremitting pain, doesn't respond great to medications and so forth. And in these cases, definitely a rheumatologist referral is super important to get on the right medications to look after one of these things. Another really common one in our society is Sherman's disease. Sherman's disease is a scary sounding name, as lots of our conditions are because they're always named after someone. And Sherman's disease is when you see someone with a really, really stiff mid-thoracic spine. So you see this real curvature of the spine through here, okay? Has huge impacts because as soon as you get a curve through that spine through here, then you're having to poke your chin and your back's not in a nice position through here. So that's called thoracic kyphosis. Sherman's disease is created and caused by the vertebral end plates, so the end of the vertebrae not growing. They fuse and they stop growing while the back part of the spine continues to in development. So it usually happens over teenage years. And so, look, it's not a major concern for most people unless it's really, really pronounced. Yeah, it does have implications, and it does have implications on the neck, and it does have implications on the lumbar spine, because what we do to one part of our spine has an immediate effect on everything else. And we'll talk to you more about that when we talk about posture as well, and maintaining good posture and why we're looking at particular things. So Sherman's and ankylosing spondylitis. I guess the other really famous one is scoliosis. Scoliosis has a really bad name. I would say, like, if we really, really fine-tune the study, 100% of people would have an element of scoliosis. I don't know one person that wouldn't have a dead straight spine. Scoliosis is when there's a curve in this plane. Okay, so if he was to be looking forwards like me, there would be almost like an S bend. That would be not a great scoliosis. And what you can see on the spine as well is as you create the curves, you also create rotation within these. Now the implication of that is that there's more compression on some joints and more opening on other joints. And so when we're talking about facet degenerate changes and those sorts of things as discussed earlier, that can have big implications in those. And so, look, large degrees of scoliosis definitely need intervention. They do things like Remington rods and surgical intervention. Most don't. Most need a lot of postural strengthening, which is what we specialize in here. We, looking at balancing the body, lengthening certain tight tissue, strengthening specific muscles which draw us long and straight. So, but scoliosis, if you've been diagnosed with scoliosis, be careful not to be fear-mongered by it, because most people do suffer from some element of scoliosis. So anyway, for more about dysfunction, we've got some specifics in our posture and spinal dysfunction video collection, and so go and have a look at those.